Hello, everyone. Welcome. I am thrilled to have Jordan Tippett with us today. We know each other from Ability, a partnership I love and still have. He's moved on. He's doing amazing things now at the role he's at. So I'll let him introduce himself. Over to you, Jordan.
Great. Thanks, Bobby. Great to be on here. Great to catch up with you. We have a lot of good memories from our time at Ability, and always good to reconnect, especially on a really important topic like this. Now I'm working as a COO in the frozen food industry, so in a leadership position and having a chance to practice and explore this concept of respect every day.
Fantastic. I'm so excited to have you and just, have a conversation about this. So, yeah, I open every conversation with, so how do you define respect, Jordan?
Yeah, yeah, it's good starting point. For me, the way I think about respect is that it is at its core just recognizing the value in another person. It is appreciating and understanding that someone has value, even if I don't understand all of the explicit details of how they add value, what they do, just assuming as the default that someone has value, they have worth, they have intellect, they have caring. And so that's where I think respect starts from in all relationships.
I love that, Jordan. I was just saying to you before we got started that on the one hand, respect is pretty straightforward, but you're the first person who brought that in. And I 100% agree with you. I mean, it's pretty fundamental. So thank you for defining it that way. All right. So let's look at again, this is respect in the workplace. So, how do you know when you're in a culture where it's pretty embedded? It's in the DNA of a good, healthy culture, company culture, to have respect at every level.
I think it's the kind of thing that you see and you can recognize in an organization when it doesn't flow in one direction, it's flowing in all directions, and and that it's really not it's not tied to positions of authority or power or organizational structure. I think um, respect is more universal, and so it becomes more evident in how you see people at different levels in the company interacting with each other, that they approach the conversation again with that idea of this person that I'm speaking with, not because they are beneath me or above me, has value. They're bringing value into the conversation. So I think it really stands out, especially when you're in group dynamics and you feel like there's psychological safety in the environment. People can speak openly. They feel it's clear that someone is not um, over the group and controlling the dynamic, but instead it's a free exchange of ideas. That's what I think a respectful culture looks like, and that's where you can identify it.
Nice. And let's kind of just go a bit deeper there. What's coming up for me as you're saying that is like, even when I've seen leaders, including myself, that want to navigate that, there's an inner critic or inner judge that's going on and going, really? I mean, I don't quite agree with your point of view. I may not say it, but it shows up, right? In body language and in interaction. Um, how do you navigate that, and how do you kind of really instill it in the culture so that it truly is in every direction, like you're saying? Yeah.
I think I think that it the way it gets pushed through the culture, that it really gets embedded into the fiber of the culture, it does need to happen from a leadership angle, that it's being demonstrated, it's being practiced every day, that someone in a leadership role, and something I try to practice myself with the team that reports to me is I'm I'm trying to see them first and foremost as people that I work with. Well, let me amend that statement. I try to see them first as people. I happen to be working with them, and so they're again, the default is they have value. That doesn't mean that we agree. And I think you ask a very important and very tough question about how you maintain that atmosphere of respect when there's disagreement. Um, I just not long ago I came out of a conversation with a company leadership where there was disagreement, and it got heated, and at the end of it, everyone was able to say, okay, well, we got somewhere, but not because someone decided they were right and others conceded that they were wrong, but instead it was, hey, that was really important for us to wrestle with, and we were able to freely exchange those ideas back and forth, even passionately and loudly in some cases. But when it was all over, it was about the points of the merits of the conversation and the argument than it was power or winning or losing. And that's where respect, I think, bubbles back to the surface as this is the foundation that all of our communication happens on.
Really well said. Yeah, and that opening piece around, if I remember, we remember to start with the humanity of the person across from you rather than role or company or outcome for the business. Because I think we get caught up with that. We get so caught up in the type A personality of getting things done that we forget that we're actually dealing with a person who has a different personality and all the
Yeah,
things that come with that, right? So,
absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah. So let's stay with that bit about when you do run into differences. And by the way, yeah, if you haven't looked at it, quick primer on the respect quotient, it basically is a process, a step-by-step process for people who have run into a divide to be heard, right? One person at a time. The R is recognize that we're all different, so we're going to have different perspectives. The E is have empathy, and the S is go between spaciousness, meaning give it time, don't rush through it. But the other S really sometimes I use a stretch, like don't just take the top level response, but have the patience to really listen to one
Yeah.
person and then pause and let the other person share their RES steps
Hmm.
before we ask any questions of each other for clarification and before we move on. And then the rest of it, the PECT is basically the P is prioritize. Like let's agree on things we're not going to shift perspective on, and so we're not going to solve for, but let's pick at least one thing that we agree is important for the organization. When a leader at levels like yours, C-suite, does that with another peer or another senior leader, and then when they come out, that last letter is transform, is, you do this one-on-one mostly, but then you go share that with your direct reports and say, hey, everyone knows we've had this divide. We have different perspectives, and we did connect and we did arrive at a new path and this one area to focus on. Now I need you to go tell your teams that we're aligned,
Yes.
because what
Yes.
happens at downstream is, like let's say your operations, I'm in marketing, and you know our teams are going to walk into meetings with our boss's agenda. That's happening all the time, and we're not talking directly about what's not being said, and we're dancing around it, and we're constantly wasting productivity and time and lots of money doing those things.
Sure, sure. And yeah, I want to jump in on that because I think there's so it's the paradox of it's like you said, we're thinking about the humanity of the person first and not the productivity and work outcomes. And paradoxically, if you can treat people as humans first, the baseline respect, you end up creating the shared momentum of we're aligned on purpose, and you probably get better work outcomes at the same time, um, even without that being a stated or obvious intention up front.
Yeah. And it's just fundamental to, human centric design and leadership. And regardless of all the hype and truth, I think about AI and the changes it's going to have, the role of the human in all of this is exactly
Oh
that,
yeah.
starting with the humanity in us, right? And let's, I think we're saying the same thing, but just to check with you, there's nothing soft about this. To me, I I'm a big advocate for these are actually the hard skills. These are not soft skills, right? Because soft skills get relegated to, yeah, they're good to have, they're not a must have. I think these are the things that make or break success of business.
I 100% agree. You can't even get to the things, the big important tasks, if you're not operating from this mindset to start with. So I would agree with you. It's not just what gets you through the door. You're not even in the building if you're not operating this way. Thinking about past roles that I've been in, different work environments and size companies, and I thought one that stood out to me. I worked in a consulting role for the University of Georgia, so a state government and federal government funded role, and naturally those are often by the book environments because it's government structure. Those were those were spaces where, for one, um, because leadership in that organization, because I knew that they were really genuinely trying to do things the right way. They were really genuinely trying to make a difference with the work that we were doing, and that they would go to bat for all the people on the team. I was able, even in that by the book environment, to really speak more openly about ideas, feel more vulnerable, to be creative and create contributions in different ways that weren't by the book necessarily, but the culture had really been established as, hey, this is a space where it's safe to do that. It doesn't mean that we can take all of the ideas and implement them, but it was allowed and it was heard, and that kept the respect in an environment like that going in both directions. I respected those leaders because they were willing to listen to someone at my level, much lower, and my ideas. And so it just makes me think about respect as, again, being it goes in multiple directions. Respect doesn't just flow from the top down. And I think that's more traditionally or historically what you might have thought in the workplace culture. There's a boss, and then there's that person's, it reports to that boss and on down. And really, if you're at the bottom of the chain, all that matters is that you respect everyone above you. And I don't think it has to be that way, and I don't think it's even ideal that it's one directional.
That's great. I'm really glad you brought in like education space, as right along with government and everything. I mean, pretty rigid traditionally around, do's and don'ts and governance and
Yes.
just the way things are done. But when you step back and bring curiosity and open the conversation rather than fighting or supporting those
Mm-hmm.
rules and guidelines, just brings such a fresh, like, I'm very active with a nonprofit and we run into these things a lot. There's a whole spectrum of people that they're like, but here are the rules.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
others
Yeah.
that are like the visionaries that are like, and just because they're rules doesn't mean that they work for us. So let's step back and look at really what's the desired outcome, what's the vision for where we're going, and then really working our way through both those things. So the end is not about, you know in a lot of bureaucratic environments, I think it's just lazy to
Mm,
point at those things rather than looking at the root thing that you're solving for.
yeah. Yeah. Great point. I agree. I agree.
Excellent. So, Jordan, what are your tips, man, for our audience? I usually like ask guests to give us 1 to 3 things that can help increase respect in the workplace.
Yeah. I think that the first one that I try to operate from every day, and I think is universal, is just start with assumed value. Treat respect as the default. It's not about something that people have to earn or that it comes from authority, but we assume people have value, and that's where respect originates from. The second one would be see people as humans and not as just cogs in the machine. They are people that have families, passions, lives outside of the office, and taking an interest in people at that level, and seeing them beyond a job title makes the trust and respect just flow back and forth between you and that person. The third one I would say, and I don't think this only applies to people in leadership roles formally, but just to lead by example and not because of authority. So don't demand respect because you have a position that means you're entitled to it. Just model that in how you listen, how you collaborate with people, how you acknowledge contributions. You give people respect freely and consistently, then it comes back that way, and it's way more powerful than hierarchy.
Absolutely. And especially, we didn't get into all the generational stuff, but I think that that's much more globally the way to go, with Gen Z in particular.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Jordan. This has been a delight. Thank you. And great advice that we're going to share with the world.
Thanks, Bobby.
All right.